Well, hey, everybody, this is Robert, and welcome to Outbreak News TV. And on today's show, I want to take a look at measles in the U.S. And I'm going to look at some of the latest numbers and locations through March 15th, 2025. And this is a map of the U.S. That I made up, and it has the number of cases for each of the states. And the total, as of yesterday, March 15th, is 328. Of course, leading the pack is Texas with 263, followed by New Mexico with 35, and then California has 5. That would be the third most affected state so far. I'll talk about Texas and New Mexico in a little bit more detail. For example, in New York, there's 3 cases, 2 in New York City and 1 in Suffolk County. 1 in Florida, that's down in Miami-Dade County. Anyway, it adds up to 17 total jurisdictions, 16 states plus New York City. Let's take a look at Texas first. 263 cases. Of course, 259 are the outbreak cases in the West Texas and Panhandle area, with Gaines County leading the way by far with 174 cases. Outside of the outbreak, there's also 4 cases reported in Texas, 2 in Harris County in the Houston area, 1 in Rockwell County, that's up near Dallas, and 1 in Travis County in the Austin, Texas area. Now, the 4 cases you see up there at the top right-hand side, that's Lamar County. That is actually part of the outbreak, measles outbreak in West Texas. And as we move on, take a look at New Mexico. New Mexico has 35 cases. 33 in Lea County. That is the county that borders that West Texas outbreak area. And then neighboring Edie County has 2 cases. According to the CDC's latest data as of Friday, of the 301 cases they had reported to them at the time, 17% of the cases required hospitalization. So that's 50 out of the 301. And that makes about more than a third of the cases of the hospitalizations are in children 19 years and younger. The vaccination status, only 2% are fully vaccinated, while 95% are unvaccinated or their vaccination status is unknown, and 3% only had 1 of the MMR vaccines doses. Now, there's been some deaths, the first time in quite some time, but I think it's been about a decade. And Texas reported the first fatality in Lubbock County, a child in Lubbock County. This was in the end of February. And then about a week later, we heard about a death in Lea County, New Mexico. And the measles was detected in the individual after they died. So that investigation is still underway. Now, I reported we have 328 measles cases so far this year through March 15th. So 2.5 months into the year. In all of 2024, there was 285 cases from 33 different jurisdictions. So we've already topped the measles cases from last year. Now, there was a pretty good blog that I found on Harvard Health talking about measles and its comeback. And the author, Dr. Robert Schmierling, asked in the title, "Measles is making a comeback. Can we stop it?" And he goes over several different things. And he asked the first question, like, can we prevent these tragedies? Talking about all the illnesses, hospitalizations, and the 2 fatalities we've seen. And he writes, measles outbreaks are highly preventable. It's estimated that 95% of people in a community are vaccinated. Both those individuals and others in the community are protected against measles. But nationally, measles vaccination rates among school-aged kids fell from 95% in 2019 to 92% in 2023. Within Texas, the kindergarten vaccination rates have dipped below 95% in about half of all the state's counties. In the communities at the center of the West Texas outbreak, which is the Gaines County community that's in a highly populated Mennonite area, the vaccination rate is about 82%. Now, declining vaccination rates are common in other parts of the U.S. too, and that leaves many people vulnerable to measles infections. Then he says, what to know about measles? Well, A, it's highly contagious. The measles virus readily spreads from person to person through the air we breathe. It can linger in the air for hours after a sneeze or cough. Estimates suggest 9 out of 10 non-immune people exposed to measles will become infected, far more contagious than the flu, COVID, and many, many others. And you can learn more about the reproduction rates for infectious diseases on a video I did recently concerning that topic, and I'll link to that in the bottom. He also writes that early diagnosis is challenging. It usually takes 7 to 14 days for symptoms to appear once a person is infected. Common early symptoms, fever, cough, and runny nose, are similar to other viral infections such as colds or flu. Now, a few days into the illness, painless, tiny white spots in the mouth, which are called Koplik spots, may appear. But they're easy to miss and are absent in many cases. And then, of course, a day or two later, a distinctive skin rash will develop. Unfortunately, a person with measles is highly contagious for days before the Koplik spots or skin rash appears. Very often, others have been exposed by the time the measles is diagnosed and precautions are taken. And he talks about that while a lot of people go through measles relatively harmless, it can be serious and even fatal. And he writes, measles is not just another cold. There's a host of complications that can develop. There can be brain inflammation, also known as encephalitis. Now, this can lead to seizures, hearing loss, or intellectual disability, pneumonia, eye inflammation, and occasionally vision loss, poor pregnancy outcomes like miscarriage, subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, or SSPE. And I did a podcast on this also, and I'll go ahead and link that below. And this is a rare and lethal disease of the brain that can develop years after the initial infection. Complications are most common among children under 5, adults over 20, pregnant women, and people with an impaired immune system. Measles is fatal in about 3 of every 1,000 cases. And then there's the effect that measles can have on the immune system. And he writes, when you get sick from a viral or bacterial infection, antibodies created by your immune system will later recognize and help mount a defense against these intruders. In 2019, a study at Harvard Medical School found that the measles virus can wipe out up to 3/4 of antibodies protecting against viruses or bacteria that a child was previously immune to. Anything from strains of the flu to herpes virus to bacteria that can cause pneumonia and skin infections. And this is the immune amnesia. And I'll link to a podcast I did on that down in the show notes below if you want to learn more about that. Now, then he talks about something incredibly important, and that's about the vaccination. It's very effective, highly, highly effective. 2 doses of the MMR vaccine provides 97% protection, and this is higher than most other vaccines. Rarely a person gets measles despite being fully vaccinated. And if they do, the disease tends to be milder and less likely to spread. He also says, it's a safe vaccine. He says the safety profile of the measles vaccine is excellent. Common side effects include temporary soreness in the arm, low-grade fever, and muscle pain. And we see that in so many other vaccines. Now, the suggestion that measles or other vaccines can cause autism has been convincingly discredited. However, this is commonly repeated, and this can contribute to significant vaccine hesitancy and the falling vaccination rates. Usually, children are given the first dose around age 1 and the second between ages 4 and 6 as part of the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella. If a child or adult hasn't been vaccinated, they can have these doses later. Now, if you were born after 1957 and received measles vaccination before 1968, consider getting revaccinated or tested for measles antibodies. The vaccine given before 1968 was less effective than later versions. And before 1957, most people became immune after having the disease itself. So anyway, it's a very good article. I'll link to that below too if you want to check it out. It's published on Harvard Health. And anyway, so that's what's going on. Large measles outbreak, particularly in Texas and New Mexico. And there's cases all around the country. Some cases are linked. Looks like they're linked to this Texas outbreak. We see some cases in Oklahoma, for example. Most of the other cases are not linked, as far as we can tell. But 328 total cases so far, more than all of last year. All right. Well, if you like this video, please subscribe to this channel, like the video, comment below, share with your friends, and I'll see you next time on Outbreak News TV.